I had been married for 3 years at that point and was having low libido and just like chronic infections, whether it be yeast infections, bacterial infections. And I had just gotten over a really severe lung infection with walking pneumonia. And that was what pushed me over the edge and was like, I need to do something different. And so it was around that time where I discovered yoni steaming through my teacher, Kelly Garza. And it tied in so beautifully with the work that you were sharing. And for me, it just created a huge shift emotionally, like how I was showing up with my partner. Because it sucks when we're not feeling well, when our yoni is feeling, infected. Like the last thing we want to do is be intimate with anyone. It's a practice that our ancestors have been doing for, I would say probably maybe even centuries.
You're listening to Cleanse, Heal, Ignite podcast, and I'm your hostess, Diane Kaiser, functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, former pro soccer player, transformational leader, holistic healer, and life purpose coach, helping you and your business awaken to your full potential. We are a transformation tribe of visionaries empowering passion-quenching, heart-centered advice to wellness warrior leaders on self-love, nutrition, mindset, and divorcing perfectionism. Our mission is to help you laugh your way to a sexy belly, love your way to vitality, and live your life with purpose by sharing real talk and truth drops that will help you cleanse your body, heal your hormones, and ignite your life. Side effects of this podcast may include all-day energy, happy hormones, perfect poops, increased confidence, becoming your own best healer, and catching the self-love virus. There's currently no vaccination to protect you from this and no known cure. In most cases, listeners experience a strong desire to accept new challenges, ditch toxic people, follow their heart, and dance like no one's watching. If you experience moods happier than usual, live it unapologetically and share with your social media friends immediately.
All right, beautiful warrior. Are you ready to talk about the yoni? What that means is the vulva. That's a beautiful part of your vaginal canal. Today, I want to talk to you about something that has been around for thousands of years and has worked in women tribes for a very long time to heal some of the most painful experiences that the common woman suffers from today, including urinary tract infections, yeast infections, endometriosis, painful sex, painful periods, heavy cycles, ovarian cysts, fibroids, tumors, uterine weaknesses, uterine prolapses, C-sections, painful birth, infertility. There are so many different things that the average woman today is just, when she says, it's just not right down there, it smells funny, it feels funny, and I haven't been able to recover from this. Hysterectomies are something that are very extreme. And I always cringe when I hear a woman that has had so many issues in her tissues and heavy menstruation that she's had to have her parts removed. And in this episode, I want to talk to you about how to really listen to your vagina, to your vulva, to your goddess garden. And if it's suffering, if it's itching, if it's painful, if it's anything other than what feels like thriving, and if you don't have healthy cravings for sex, if you feel like you just are not able to even have a climax or enjoy sex or experience pleasure, this is definitely going to be an episode for you, because most women today, and this might include you, like it was me, the only solutions that we have are birth control or any kind of medication, pharmaceuticals, having parts removed. And if it's painful sex, a lot of women are just struggling. They just think that they're supposed to suffer, and then their relationship suffers. And so today I want to talk to you about something that's called yoni steaming. And this is a practice that helps a lot of women to release a lot of emotional issues, mental blocks, maybe some trauma, maybe sexual issues, maybe they were raped, or maybe they have had abortions, maybe they have some scar tissue remaining from a procedure that they've had, like C-sections. So today, if you're looking for more flow in that area, more life force, more vitality, to age gracefully and to be able to have pleasure in this area where we are, this is where your chakra is that's responsible for co-creation with Mother Nature. We literally create from this chakra called your sacral chakra. And this is our womb. This is what makes us women. This is where we birth ideas. And so I want this to be kind of like an experience where you consider, This is like a birthing cycle. It's like a rebirth. It is something that you can learn to do at home that takes 10 minutes. If you do this once a week, your life will probably change. And I mean by your life, like your tissues, your emotional state, your mental blockages, your spiritual heightening, and just pleasure and your ability to relax into that area of your body, including even back pain. So this is very powerful to connect to your feminine energy, to relax into your vibrancy, to create more vitality in your life and boost your immunity. Also helps with sleep, and it can bring you into a beautiful state of bliss that so many of us are after. So let's get into what exactly yoni steaming is, how to do it, what to do at home, how easy it is, and why it's beneficial for you, even if you've tried so many things with the doctor and have done several labs, tried many medications, and have tried many different things that you feel like may work temporarily until they stop. There's also a special link that I will put below for my warrior followers, and it's to get some of the yoni steaming herbs that are customary to the kind of things that you're struggling with and suffering from that you'll learn about more on the podcast. So click the link below and you'll see more about those herbal concoctions that you can try at home. So let's get into it today. Yoni steaming with Marisa Reyes. Hey warrior, welcome to this episode where we're going to talk about your vagina health. We're going to talk about things that maybe you have never heard about, something called yoni steaming. And if you have any questions at all during this, feel free to ask below in the chat box. And if you're listening to this later on in the podcast or YouTube or anywhere else, feel free to comment below and ask us questions so we can get to them for you. This is recorded currently for my Warrior Cleanse program, and it's one of the bonuses that I brought on to focus on women's hormones and vaginal health, because right now I was talking with Marisa, who I will announce in just a moment, on what I've seen in my program recently and working with lots of clients from all around the world is that we have a near epidemic of women suffering from urinary tract infections, yeast infections, painful periods, painful sex, hysterectomies, fibroids, ovarian cysts, and you get the picture. Our vagina is not meant to be a battle zone. It's not meant to be a war field. It's meant to be a beautiful goddess garden, is what I like to call it, where we're fertile with lovemaking, we're fertile with baby making and creation, because that is that chakra, your chakra, that second chakra here, your sacral chakra, it's sacred. And the color is orange. And that chakra is responsible for your energy that you create within to create on the outside, to create within, to create out without. And many people are feeling like, God, I feel so lost and I don't feel like I have a purpose. I don't feel like I have a vision. I don't feel like I'm doing anything of significance in my life. And a big part of that is because that area of our body, our goddess garden, is a war zone. So we want to teach you to become your inner warrior goddess of this beautiful zone, so that it could be something that you're no longer afraid of, and it's a place of celebration for you. So I could not think of anybody better to talk about this topic, Marisa Reyes, and she is going to take us down the journey of how to recover our tissues and what yoni steaming is and what kind of things she has created to help her clients. She's in Los Angeles. I'll let her tell you guys a little bit about herself. First of all, I met her through my Chi Hormone Warrior Transformation Program, where she came into me, and I'll let her share a little bit of her journey and where that was 2 years ago and where she is now. So Marisa, thank you for being here today, first of all.
Yes, thank you for having me. It's so nice to see you again, and it's taking me back already to, I think it was like 2 years ago when I reached out. And the reason I had reached out was I had been married for 3 years at that point and was having low libido and just like chronic infections, whether it be yeast infections, bacterial infections. And I had just gotten over a really severe lung infection with walking pneumonia. And that was what pushed me over the edge and was like, I need to do something different. And so it was around that time where I discovered yoni steaming through my teacher, Kelly Garza. And it it tied in so beautifully with the work that you were sharing. And for me, it just created a huge shift emotionally, like how I was showing up with my partner.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because it sucks when we're not feeling well, when our yoni is feeling, infected. Like the last thing we want to do is be intimate with anyone. And so the yoni steaming, I had seen it. I went to a Korean spa and I had seen it on the menu and I was like, what is this? And did some more research and found out about all the incredible benefits and was just looking, I'm like, yeah, I've had menstrual cramps, lower back pains, all of that. And so I ended up going to a spa and did my very first yoni steam and was just like, oh my God, melted. It's like taking a hot bath. I think sometimes women hear it and they think, oh, you're sitting on top of and I'll go ahead and explain a little bit what it is, but there's a little bit of fear because it's this unknown
Yeah.
practice. But essentially, it's a practice that our ancestors have been doing for, I would say probably maybe even centuries. And it's found all over the world. Some people will see it in, Asia and Central America, Africa, Europe. It's everywhere. And essentially, it was started to support women with their postpartum health. So, once a woman gives birth, there's so many things that come up in terms of, infection and trying to lose the baby weight. And my teacher, Kelly Garza, who has Steamy Chick, she did some research because doctors aren't researching this because they can't make money off of it.
Amen, girlfriend. Seriously. Thank you for saying that because that's the first question in people's mind, right? It's like, well, if it's so beneficial and powerful, then why isn't my doctor talking about it? And you can apply that to anything, right? Like I think the first time that you did enemas was when you did work with me and Chi, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like the same thing. Oh God, a hole that I've never like really explored. It's kind of like a black hole, if you will. It's weird to refer to our organs and our parts like our anus and our vagina like black holes, but that's really how they are because we have not been taught to be intimate researchers and intimate partners, protectors of our own parts. And like literally OBGYNs now will say, oh, you know what, don't touch your breasts anymore. Like don't do the self breast exams because, we'll do it for you. And I'm like, what, why? And they say, well, because we found that women were getting like too paranoid and they were finding things and they were freaking out and it was causing more problems. So now we're going to do it for you every 2 years. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Like I am the protector and the sister and lover and doctor of my own temple. For you to cut me out of me being proactive about my health, 2 years could be like cancer comes super quick. And the same things could happen with our vaginal health as you could have a root cause issue in your tissue and they're not addressing this in the manuals. They're saying, here, take a drug for it. Like you said, that's what makes money. What doesn't make money is literally getting to that root cause. And it's funny because the base of your spine, the very root of your chakra is the root chakra, which is just above the sacral. And you talked about back pain. So this is something now, back pain is like affecting 80% of the population on a regular basis. So even if you don't have any air quotes issues with your vagina tissues, if you have back pain, they're neighbors. And so I'd love to talk more about, what benefits that yoni steaming has, because yoni, if you guys are like, well, what's the yoni? Your yoni is actually, you take it.
Yeah.
What's your yoni, Marisa?
So the yoni is another word for the vulva. A lot of women think it's vagina, but it's actually the vulva. The vagina is the vaginal, the canal, leading up to the uterus. And so basically, yoni is like it's a Sanskrit word for like our sacred gateway. And to kind of just give an image of what steaming is, if this is completely new to you, and I have my stool right behind me. There's different types of steaming you could do. You could do a gentle steam, just on the ground where you make a pot of tea. And we'll talk a little bit about like what herbs to use. Sometimes you can just start with using water, making sure it's filtered, clean water. And if you don't have any herbs or can't access any, you can always use just a little bit of salt or apple cider vinegar. And then you boil the water For my stool, I have a burner that keeps it going. And basically, the woman sits on the stool, it has a hole on it, and she can put on a long skirt so that it keeps the steam in. The steaming rises up the vaginal canal. And like you were saying, Diane, it relaxes that root chakra. It relaxes the perineum, that spot right between the vagina and the anus. And in doing so, it's activating our parasympathetic nervous system, which I know you talk a lot about in Qi, right? This is our ability to relax and digest. So I've had women come to me and they said that, they were having digestive issues. And then after the steaming, all of a sudden, like things are flowing through. And I think what's happening is that our body's learning to relax so that we can fully release physically. And, when you go online, you'll read a lot about all the physical benefits of steaming. But there's also so many incredible emotional, spiritual effects that this has. And there have been so many times, and this has happened to myself as well, where when women come to me, I'll do a guided meditation, connecting to the elements, connecting to their womb, and just connecting to any trauma that we may have stored in our womb, because this is, like you were saying, this is where it all gets stored in our tissues. And we absorb so much when we take on a new partner, whether it's a man or a woman. We take on whenever, even if I remember getting like blow to the stomach, right? Just like that physical impact and the armoring that takes place. So it's just, there's so many different elements to why it's so incredibly powerfully healing. And you can go online and research yoni steaming and you're going to see like everything, doctors saying women should not be doing this because, it's creating moisture and like that's where infections can live. But as a woman who's experienced it and does it weekly, if not weekly, then monthly, I know for me, it's helped immensely in my yoni health, and in so many women that I have seen.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's, you're always going to see, and this is where it gets maddening, but this is why I love having these teams, the Warrior Cleanse and the Qi Hormone Warrior Transformation Group, is that we're like literal medicine women. We're like the good witches from hundreds of years ago that have come back and said, hold up, I knew this stuff a long time ago. I used to administer this on patients. And I've been told many times I was a doctor in former lifetimes. And so it's like, there's just something that calls us to do this work. And many of us have also been so hurt and harmed and hindered by Western medicine. And it's just that we get to this point where you're like, I've tried all these things. Nothing has worked long-term. And this is too painful for me to continue. So for me, when I had UTIs, I first started getting them. And that's actually what brought me into the work that I do now. I was 21 playing pro soccer. And I couldn't play. I have to go off the field because I was having such bad UTIs. And it's the worst feeling in the world. And I'll never forget the day they told me I need to take an antibiotic every day for the rest of my life. And I just went, wait, that does not sound right. Like my intuitive bells just went off and it said, that's something that you take for like 5 to 10 days and then you get off, because it just didn't, I don't even know what I knew back then. I think I just knew up here. So we have, incidences of urinary tract infections. And Marisa, I'm going to be doing a podcast with Dr. Tom O'Brien soon, because I'll share this now publicly, because, for my partner, I don't know if it's in my tissues, because like you had issues in your lungs. And so everybody listening, your mucosa is all connected, from your nose, your mouth, your lungs, your stomach, digestive tract, your vaginal tissues. All of these things are lined and coated, with immunoglobulins that are there to protect you. And if they wear down, then you have a low immune system and poor function. Because like if you had breast implants or Botox, or if you've had an infection, or you're eating toxic foods, or you have heavy metals in your mouth, or whatever the case might be, if you're taking medications all the time over the counters, these things are all toxins that end up really working the immune system hard, which are all along your mucosa. It's not just in your stomach, it's all along your mucosa. So if your body's having to respond to toxins and infections, full time, it becomes a chronic issue, which we are now facing. At least the American population, the average person has 1 or 2 chronic infections. And so that means that your immune system is so sluggish and it can't fight things off, that you then have a flare up, like Marisa said, with your lungs, or you then have a flare up in your vaginal tissues. Like right now, when my partner and I have sex, I get urinary tract infections pretty regularly from receiving his semen. And so my question was, is that my immune system that's not functioning as well because I had breast implants and was doing Botox and toxic beauty things? And I know that because of my labs that show that, the kind that we do in clients that we did on Marisa, or is it that my partner's semen is toxic? Because that's what we're going to be doing the podcast with Dr. Tom on, is that men will pass toxins through their semen. And so if you have a healthier vagibiome, if your vulva is healthier, if you have healthier immunoglobulins to protect you from, whatever the threat might be, then the onset of UTIs and yeast infections may not be as great. So I did want to say that you could do all the yoni steaming in the world, you could do all the probiotics in the world, you could do all the antibiotics in the world, but if you're still not addressing whatever toxins coming inside, it's still going to be like a back and forth, even natural treatment, but still can something that needs to be addressed for sure. So I did want to mention that. Anything to add to that? Because I had a question for you.
Yeah, no, I love what you said. And I think it's good to address that this is not going to be the answer to the end all. What's that expression? That it's like, I understand that there were many changes that I made to my lifestyle.
Yes.
Right? Like I would never say, just do the yoni steaming and that's it. It's like, it takes looking at your diet, looking at your lifestyle, looking at your water intake. There's so many other layers to it. So this is a really sweet add-on to just like supporting that healing process.
Yeah. Thanks for adding to that. And it's true. So if the yoni steaming is not working, or meaning like it's not getting rid of everything, just to let you know, your body is a holistic organism, and it's so beautiful, and everything is connected. So let's start getting into some of the symptoms and the struggle that women experience, Marisa, where they have experienced resolve. Like, let's say they have addressed their diet and the prescriptions that hopefully they're no longer taking, and their mental emotional state, their water hydration, their sleep. Let's say they've addressed all those things. They feel like they're in a pretty good space, but they just have some other things going on. UTIs, yeast infections, endometriosis. Tell us more about the kind of symptoms that women come to you with that you then see have resolved from doing yoni steaming alone.
Mm-hmm. A lot of the women who have come to me, it's because of the menstrual pains. So the cramping, the bloating, the tender breasts, the acne, all those things that come up with the hormonal imbalance. And so I was mentioned before, I know like my teacher, her story was she had cysts and did the steaming consistently. And this is something else to know. You're not going to do a steam once and maybe you might see results immediately, but like anything, it takes consistency for at least 3 to 6 months. And I remember when we talked about the CBD, right? It was the same thing. Sometimes you can't really just take it once and then expect, to be healed overnight. It's really like, it's taking the commitment to stay consistent and really play with our bodies as this, it's like we're our own science experiment, right? And if it doesn't work, then we'll say, we'll try different herbs, maybe it's like a different herb that we need to try. Maybe it's a different plan, maybe if you've been steaming once a week, maybe we should try, 3 days in a row before your period and 3 days in a row after your period, which, someone that asked, when's the best time in your cycle to do the steam? Can you do it all month long? And I want to address the contraindications. Like there are times when a woman should not steam. And that's when she's on her period, on her bleed. Because basically what's happening is the steam is activating the blood circulation. This is usually what happens when we're cleansing, right? It's like our body, our lymphatic system is getting toxins to move through. So when our body is bleeding, our body knows what to do. We don't need to assist it during the bleed. So you don't want to steam during your bleed. And if a woman is trying to get pregnant, she does not want to steam after her ovulation because it's a cleansing, which is why if a woman has cysts or fibroids, it can support women in cleansing the vaginal canal and the uterine wall. So basically, there have been women who I've spoken to who have done steaming where it's supported in getting rid of all that. It can help with relaxing pelvic floor muscles, so a lot of times when there's that tension in that root lock, and if there's like pain during sex, it could be from having a lot of that tension. As I mentioned before, it's really amazing for postpartum. A lot of times what happens is after a woman gives birth, all of the organs are kind of in a funky position, maybe there's uterus prolapse. So this can help support in tonifying. And because the analogy I love to give is when you go for a facial, right? You know how they steam your face and it opens up all the pores and then eventually it tightens them up. So you can imagine that's steam and that's what it's doing for our yoni. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's one that endometriosis and cysts and fibroids are coming up a lot lately. I mean, especially fibroids. And, especially in my community, women who are coming to me have either had breast implant illness, and they've come to me from reading my book, Killer Breasts, or watched the Non-Toxic Beauty Summit where I talked about, all these toxic things that we're applying to our body, tampons that are sprayed with dioxin, which is bleach, and they're using GMO cotton. And it's just so sad, like the assault that our vaginas have experienced our whole life. It's so multifactorial. And so I'm seeing a lot of fibroids because of that. I've also seen a lot of fibroids in women's breasts, as well as in their vaginal canal, like wherever that lies. They have fibroids down there, and they're struggling. So I'd love to talk more about fibroids and like, what is it? How is it helping to reduce fibroids? What does that look like?
So, I'll be honest, in terms of like the actual scientific medical part, because of the research, it's like that has not been done.
Limited.
There's only so much that we can, assume and try to like guess what's happening. But basically from what I understand, there's just this like softening that happens, right? So I've, it's mostly just been from like the stories of women being like, this is, I did the steam and this is what's happened. So in terms of like how it's happening, I can't say I like can give you the details on that. And I'm curious and I feel like I've done research around this and like didn't find too much.
Yeah.
So that's the crappy part about all of this, right?
Yeah, it's the same thing over here too. Like when I've been doing research for my documentary, Dying to Beautiful, and I was like, there's no research, or it's really hard to find certain things, and it's, I don't know if they're hidden on purpose, because that is happening right now, a lot of shadow banning on a lot of these healthy things. So we don't have to dive into the science behind it, but I think that the case studies speak for themselves. So I know that you said, wasn't it your mentor and then other women that you've witnessed that have had fibroids, and they did go away, or they never came back?
From what I understand, they got rid of them. They didn't come back. And I can say that as far as resources, something that Kelly Garza did share in the facilitator training that I did with her is that, she works with an acupuncturist. And one of the resources that she has is this big, book on Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine. And they talk about how when a woman bleeds, like this is known as like the fifth vital sign, right? Like we can determine our health, like we know how our body's doing by the color of our blood, by the thickness of it. Is it clotty?
The
smell of it. Is it odorous? Is it light pink? Is it brown? And so I feel like those are huge, like flags. Like, look here, if it's super light and it's pink, then this could be, some kind of deficiency. If it's feeling like clumpy, it could be stagnation. So, which is why, like for me, I know that like this last bleed, it was a little bit darker at the beginning and the end. And I'm like, all right, I think this is a reflection of me not moving enough this last month.
Yes, lymphatic system. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be talking, if you're doing the Warrior Cleanse with us right now, because this is happening live, this will probably later be on my podcast, but if you're doing the Warrior Cleanse with us now, we will be talking about the lymphatic system and how to get it moving with Kelly Kennedy. And she's also been on my podcast. So we'll talk about how to do some plans of action. So if you guys haven't done the Warrior Cleanse with us, if you're watching this later, jump in it, because we talk about like how to bring these two together. Because having lymphatic movement and drainage while also doing yoni steaming, I can imagine would be just a kind of like we're pulling from the lymphatic system and then pulling out from our vulva and our vagina. And if the blood is thick, like you're saying, then there's something upstream that needs to be resolved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. So many layers, like and then there's a whole emotional element.
Yes.
Too.
Let's talk about that, please. Because
Oh
I mean, 1 in 4, I think it's close to 1 in 3 now, women are on some kind of mood altering medication, benzodiazepines, antidepressants, anti-anxieties. They're taking date rape to fall asleep, not, and this is medicated date rape,
wow.
drug. Yeah. And I mean, it's a minor dose, it's a smaller dose, but it's very serious right now, mood altering medication. So let's talk about the spiritual. Let's get into the juice of the emotional, the mental. What shifts when we're just working on this one little organ, and then all of a sudden things get better? What kind of things, breakthroughs or even breakdowns, releasing can women see?
Oh my gosh, I've seen I would say, I don't know how many women I've steamed, but I would say about 60 to 75%. I feel like what it is women are given a space to just fill, right? Because part of the guided meditation is filling the contact of the steam with your yoni, right? And if we can just start with filling our root and then bring that sensation up, and then to filling what's present in our heart, right? Like, I know meditation is so powerful, and yet I don't know how many of us are really staying consistent to a dedicated practice, because I know when I have been consistent, there have been so many times where I'll just break out into tears during my meditation, and I see that happen. Right?
Yeah. Especially at the end, I'm like, Shavasana. Everybody hug me. Let's have a cuddle puddle, like a literal cuddle puddle of tears and sweat.
Yes. And so the same thing happens on the steam. I've experienced so many women it's the softening around the heart that happens that allows them to feel all the things that have been suppressed, that we just haven't given ourselves time to experience, because we're always set. And I'm like speaking from my own experience, just like I've got my to-do list that I'm going down, and just constantly focusing on what's happening outside in the world. And finally, when I stop to be like, okay, there's a lot of heaviness in the world in this moment. And as women, how sensitive we are and how much of that we take on. So really, it's an opportunity to give women a space to feel, to be seen, to be heard. And it's beautiful doing this one-on-one. And it's really important to be able to do this on our own and do it for ourselves, right? Remembering that like we're going to be our own best guide when it comes to this. Yes, it's awesome to have a support, and even to do group steams. I love doing group steams.
Dude, that sounds witchy. That sounds witchy, wacky, warrior woman like. I want to go.
Oh my gosh. I will totally come to Sedona and do a group steam for you.
I know. I was literally just thinking, I'm like, well, I live in Sedona, and this is like one of the most magical places in the world. So,
Yes.
thought idea, Marisa. I'm feeling, admittedly, I've had an abortion, and I know many women have had one or many women have had children, or there's women who've had sexual trauma, or they've been raped, or, maybe not so much rape, but I could even say that in my younger years, being drunk or blacked out. And then, I got date raped one time. And then just not really making the best choices for yourself, and living that's like suppressed guilt that just gets trapped in our tissues. And we're such receivers. We are like that Venus flytrap down there, and we're such receivers. When we have sex, we don't just receive someone's penis. We receive energy. We receive some of their trauma. We can activate our own, and there's ancestral trauma. I mean, there's so many layers. So, what have you heard from women, what they've said after about maybe some emotions that have come up for them, or maybe a visitor, like someone who had passed, or like a sexual trauma, anything like that? What would you like to share?
Oh my goodness, so many stories. I had a woman where she, like, in her mind, and like we all have different ways. For some people, maybe they have visions. For some people, that they feel it. Maybe they hear voices. For this one woman, she had this visual of this steam like rising up her fallopian tubes. And all of a sudden, these memories of being a child came up. And just this feeling that she had of some trauma that happened around with her mom and not being wanted or loved. Mm-hmm. And she just broke out into tears and just had this like, wow, I didn't realize I have been carrying this around for decades.
Wow.
And to think about like how many of us are carrying things, like what you're saying, we're carrying things that we're not even fully aware of. And I've had women who have had abortions and they do the steaming, and just like the guilt that they've been holding on to. And it's really this practice of a forgiveness and letting the steam being this nurturing self-care practice where it's like we're restoring this, like, it's okay. Like, life happens. We make decisions and we get to be at peace with where we're at in this moment.
You say steam, and I just visualize, water. Women's need to be in water to feel flow in their life and to create space. Water can come in and penetrate and hydrate and empower in ways that other things can't. So especially women, we are womb, we are woman, and that womb is such our powerhouse. And for so many women, they come to me, so much you, Marisa, you were on a path of, you had your business, you didn't come to me and say, I feel like I've lost my power, I don't know my purpose, but you refined it even more so with the work that we did.
Definitely.
And so when women are experiencing a sense of loss of power, passion, purpose, you will find it in your lady garden and your goddess garden. And, if you've been on birth control, if you've had C-sections, if you've had tears like Marisa's mentioned, there's so many things that can help with. And I highly recommend this to every woman. I admittedly have never even done it. And, that's probably one of the reasons I brought you on too, is like, I'm curious for myself. And I really think this is becoming a very popular topic, and you've been talking about it so much on your social media. I thought this is something that I'd like to bring forth to my tribe. And so is there anybody that should not do it? Or and you said something about a contraindication earlier by not doing it when you're bleeding, right? But is there any age group? Is it too young, too old? What does that look like?
Yeah. As far as contraindications, as I mentioned, if women are trying to get pregnant, not doing it after ovulation because that can clear out the semen. So if a woman's trying to, stay pregnant, she wants to not clear that out, but she can do it before ovulation. As far as age, I love, my mom loves to steam. I would love to steam my grandmothers. That would be a whole other experience. But it's beautiful. And I've asked my teacher, she said that for little girls, you can introduce it to them. You don't necessarily need to do, normally I steam women anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes. Women who have IUDs in, I usually steam for 10 minutes max. And that's just because you don't want to like reposition anything, because it does kind of create this like opening and relaxing effect. You want to just kind of keep the IUD where it's at. If there's the arm implant, birth control. If a woman has that in, it's recommended to not steam because that produces some kind of, if I remember correctly, some kind of mucus or something in the vaginal canal that you don't want to clear out. And so the steaming, would do that.
Mm.
And as far as age, I feel like this is, I want to create like a yoni steaming practice ritual for girls before they even start their bleeding, right?
Oof, I was thinking the same thing.
Right?
Wow.
Because I know that when I first had my period, I was miserably insane.
Me too.
Horrible.
Like,
right?
What do you do about it?
Yeah. And so if I would have had like a ritual around this is what we can do before the bleed or after the bleed, it just would have created a whole new context around like, this is a beautiful thing. I hated my bleed. I hated it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's so many women who felt that way when they were younger because it's something like where this transition we're going through. So I feel like the steam could be a really beautiful way of.
Oh my God, Marisa. Okay, just like you saying this, when I really, I collect a ton of medical history before I work with any client, and myself included. The very beginning of women's hormonal issues is puberty and is the onset of their bleed. And I mean, first of all, there's so many things that when we're 13, 12, now 10, getting our period, we're just awkward. Like, who's teaching us how to use a tampon, or like what kind is healthy? We're putting up BPA lined plastic containing, tampons into our vagina. And we're just set up from the very get-go to be screwed. I mean, not physically screwed because most of us don't end up having sex because we're such pain, right? But like, I don't say the word screw, but anyway, you get the point. It was just meant to be funny. Most of us aren't getting screwed because we were feeling like our vagina hurts and it's screwed up. So, at a young age, that creates the beginning of what our future will look like, because we're literally tilling the garden at that age, 10, 11, 12, when we get our period. When I was like 15, I had the worst periods ever, that I knew of anyway. And I had to stay home from school for 3 days, to the point where I then had to got on birth control to regulate them, which didn't do much of anything but numb a little bit of the pain. Then I got cystic acne, which then I was on Accutane, which has permanently destroyed my lining, my mucosa, my hypothalamus, which is the brain that controls your endocrine glands. So I absolutely encourage you to do that, Marisa, and anybody listening to do this for yourself. And if you're listening now on the podcast or on YouTube, join the Warrior Cleanse, because the rest of this module is going to be in the Warrior Cleanse. And we're going to talk about how to do that for yourself. So thanks again, Marisa, for creating this, for being here today, for all of your wise woman wisdom, and everybody go check out her program. I will see you all. Have an amazing rest of your day, and make your yoni your priority, because pleasure does matter for you, especially.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If this episode really tugged at your soul and you're ready to have your personal breakthrough, we would love to have a heart-to-heart with you to get you crystal clear on 3 things. What do you want? What's standing in your way? And how do we get you to your soul goal in the fastest time possible? Visit my site, dianekaiser.com/call to schedule your free 1-hour connection session with one of our warriors to map out exactly how you want to look, feel, and live. We've helped thousands of women warriors just like you all around the world free themselves from the symptoms and suffering they never thought possible. And you just might be our next success story. Talk soon.